Welcome into the Michigan State Hockey Hub as we have a special guest on to talk about some news that just, I guess, kind of broke within the past about hour or so. Sam Sklar is here with the state news. Sam, how's it going today?
It's good. It's kind of crazy times. Kind of thought that there would be some significant roster changes this offseason, and it's starting that wheel is starting to turn a little bit, and that's why we're here.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I remember Coach Cole, I guess it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago at his press conference, and mentioned the roster would look different. What that meant was up to our determination and imagination. However, we saw Drew DeRitter enter the transfer portal for his final year of eligibility, and he is going to North Dakota, as he mentioned in a tweet earlier this week or last week. But the news of the day that's came out is that Aiden Gallacher is actually entering the transfer portal. And for those of you who may not know much about Aiden Gallacher, he just finished his sophomore season at Michigan State, his freshman year in 2020. 2 assists for 2 points this year, 1 goal, 1 assist for 1 point. Sam, where do you want to start with this?
Yeah, well, I think the reason why this is significant news, not necessarily because Aiden Gallagher is this super talented defenseman that is a huge blow for Michigan State, but it's more just a numbers piece, and that currently on the roster, they only have 5 defensemen, and that's including an incoming freshman. And obviously, you need at least 6 on your roster to play. So that's sort of the biggest, blow I think right now for Michigan State. Um, when he's looking at the stats right there, he wasn't really a point scorer. Never really jumped out to you on the stat sheet. Honestly, I was surprised that he only had 2 points this season and 2 points last season when I was just looking at it earlier today. And I believe his only goal was an empty netter against Ferris State.
Yes, it was. I think he was that the one he threw like all the way the length of the ice or something.
I don't remember how it was, but it was with like just over a minute left.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it's going to be a thin blue line. I mean, Dennis Sasana left, graduation, whatever, didn't return. The Krieger twins are out. Now Gallagher. Can you paint the picture and just tell us who's left currently on the Michigan State roster for the D line?
I mean, also, I believe Christian Krieger is in the transfer portal right now, so
Oh, okay.
it looks like he is, thinking about not necessarily returning here, but possibly finding another school for his 5th year. I would sort of doubt that Michigan State would want to bring him back unless, they need numbers, and he would want to have to come back too. But in terms of what they've got right now, it's Nash Nienhuis and David Gucciardi are kind of those top 2 guys that you'd have to feel the most comfortable with. Gucciardi was a pretty solid freshman that I think that everyone's a little bit excited from what we saw from him last year. And Nash Nienhuis had a pretty solid freshman year. He was a sophomore also last year, but when he was a freshman in 2020, he showed some flashes, was playing on the top power play unit for a little bit. And so, those are probably going to be your top 2 defensemen. And then your other 2 that you've got that are coming back would be Paul Connor and Cal Divitz, who are both 2 guys who don't have much playing experience at all.
Yeah, so let's start from the top and go down. I guess, I mean, we all know Gucci already had a great year, showed some flashes, showed offensive ability. I think he's definitely going to be an important part of this team next year. You mentioned Nash Niehaus. He has some offensive ability too. I used to always confuse him and Aiden Gallagher, so this will be much easier for me going forward. For whatever reason, I confuse those 2 people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Matt Basgall, right? That's the freshman coming in.
Yep.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from him, just from the little bit that I've seen and everything I've read about him and heard about him. It looks like his role could be larger than expected right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on like the numbers right now. It's going to have to be because he's that 5th guy. I honestly have not done a whole lot of research or just film watching of him, but I mean he's a true freshman playing in a few years in the USHL with the Omaha Lancers and Tri-City Storm. So I mean, it looks like he's sort of going to have to be thrown into the fire, figure of speech, but it's also kind of a reality right now.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to have to learn quickly. And we all know how freshmen take some time to adjust to the college game, especially freshmen on the blue line. There's a lot going on. You're kind of focusing heavily on both offense and defense. There's just a lot to grasp your freshman year there. The bottom pairing, what can you? I mean, I talk about Powell Connor all the time because I like him a lot, and he's a defense first guy. Blocked a lot of shots for Michigan State. Took a larger role as the season went on. Kind of in and out of the lineup, bottom pairing / extra skater type. He's probably ready to take on a third pairing role if they. I mean, they don't really have much of an option right now. Who was the last player that you mentioned?
Al Divitz.
Yes.
He's played one career game, which was not even this season. It was 2 years ago. And so, I mean, nobody, at least we don't really know, I think, what to expect from him. But, he's going to, I guess, have to play. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, he hasn't even been able to crack the lineup at all. And now, granted, the blue line stayed pretty healthy past couple of years, and there's some upperclassmen and whatnot. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. But what's the answer here? How do they add in the portal? Do they add grad transfers? We saw they just added a grad transfer from Brown to strengthen up the forward group. What do you think the answer here is for the blue line?
Yeah, and I think that because it's sort of late, I guess, in recruiting for this upcoming fall, that they're going to have to sort of look toward the transfer portal. And I think that just given Michigan State's last, I guess, decade or just 5 years of sort of being at the bottom of the Big Ten, it's not necessarily a place I don't think that transfers are, just like deadly wanting to come to Michigan State. And that's just sort of the reality. And so they might just have to end up picking up some lower level transfer guys, maybe some Ivy Leaguers or something like that. I mean, obviously the playing time would be enticing to people just because, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot right now if you do end up committing to Michigan State. But it kind of just seems like the transfer portal is the only option. And I think it's also just a interesting factor with having no longer having Joe Exter on the coaching staff, because we know that he was heavily involved in the recruiting. And so you kind of wonder if, that we knew that Michigan State was going to be losing 3 senior defensemen, and you can't really back on any of those guys returning for a 5th season. But Michigan State only has 1 freshman defenseman. Like, that's kind of just seems like a lapse or just a kind of a mistake in the recruiting end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can talk about bringing in more freshmen or late ads. The reality is, I mean, this team finishes at the bottom of the Big Ten every year the past few years. If you think replacing 3 senior defensemen with a bunch of freshman defensemen is going to improve the team, it just simply won't. Like I said, it takes too long to adjust. I think the best route has to be experience. Bring in transfers, get creative with it, whatever you have to do. But we all know that Coach Cole has a lot on his plate right now, especially with Exeter leaving. There's even more, I'm sure. So I mean, it's just time for them to get to work.
Yeah, I mean, the experience is going to be a very interesting factor because they're not going to have any senior defensemen. They're all going to be either juniors, sophomores, or freshmen. And just sort of that chemistry aspect, because I don't think that, at least I can't recall a time that Nash Nienhuis and David Gucciardi were paired together, just because they kind of play, I think, in a way, sort of similar styles. Yeah. They're slightly more offensive minded, maybe, versus hard hitting, maybe more like a Paul Connor defenseman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right, Sam. Well, thanks for joining us today. We just wanted a quick episode here. We will definitely have you on later in the off season next year. I'm sure more than once. So, thanks again, and have a great day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, you've been listening to the Michigan State Hockey Hub. Go Green.